September 8 Hunab Kun. After having a peculiar dream, who in their right minds would let a toddler ride an antler, Harry woke up feeling normal, something strange considering what he had learnt the past night. "Yo, Harry, what happened last night?" asked his chupacabra friend. "You looked like you had seen a ghost." Not the best of the analogies, considering there were a lot of ghosts in Europe, but the point got through. Harry frowned, thinking in his apparent calm, the headmaster told me of my parents." Misley made a shocked face. "I'm famous in Europe for something Mum did." Misley turned confused. "So they gave the fame of your mother?" Harry nodded and took out a cloak to cover himself. "Dude, they cheated her." Harry chuckled under his breath. "How amusing a reaction. I'm known as the Chico que Vivio." The red-eyed boy gave a bark of laughter. "Who the hell named you that?" Harry gave the book to Misley, who looked at the title, Great Wizarding Events of the 20th Century. The chupacabras looked at Harry, who had changed from his PJs at an impressive speed. "I'm assuming that this only covers Europe." Harry nodded. "I read the index before I fell asleep. The only mention of America anywhere is during the fall of the Soviet Union and the Grindelwald War, but that was obvious, considering the timing. It doesn't mention the end of the Mayan Rebellion, or the discovery of technomancy." The book closed with a snap. "No more English books for you." Harry nodded in agreement, threw the book on his bed, and walked out the room, Misley following. Harry ignored the stare he was receiving, as not only his cloak but his uncovered chest. It was too damn humid to have closed clothing. It wasn't every day you saw a flat 11-year-old boy. And if anyone asked him if it was an exaggeration, he would laugh. He was the fittest in a class of 40. Only 2 could run a kilometer. 20 held the 100 meters. He and another held during an entire football match. What's 60 years of peace do to a nation of warriors? When do they give us our classroom? Harry heard a girl ask one of her peers, probably someone older. Before breakfast, the class list is posted in a board at the mess hall. That solved one problem. He wouldn't want to wander around aimlessly. "Do you think they sort us like in primary school?" asked Misley as he leaned his head back. "I doubt they would want smart people with idiots," answered Harry, his mind jumping to what would happen if he was put with Jamie. "We have weapons that can stop stupidity." The red-eyed boy snorted. "You really believe the teachers wouldn't stop that?" Harry remembered the man who had taken him to the principal's office, and the principal himself. There should be at least one professor that wouldn't mind ridding the gene pool of idiotic genes. "The dude that took you away yesterday?" Harry nodded. He was quite serious. The rest of the journey was spent in silence, allowing Harry to look around to the students. People had already divided in groups, with the exception of a few girl/guy couples and old-time friends. Giggling girls, barking boys, smirking athletes, arrogant smartasses, there was one of everything. It wouldn't be long for him to make another enemy. Misley and Harry separated once they reached the mess hall, the humanoid leaving in search of others like him on their generation and Harry collecting their schedule. It seems that he was mistaken, as people had been sorted according to their foci: warrior class, support class and ceremonial class. The raven-haired boy scanned the lists, finding himself in the warrior class and Misley in the support class. He also looked for Lucy, for curiosity's sake, and found her in the ceremonial class. The green-eyed boy made a note to look for her later. The difference in classes could be as big as a cliff or as small as a nail, but he wanted to know the difference. The only difference he could see was that Misley had a class called projectile magic instead of battle magic. Then maybe the girl had elemental magic instead. Or summoning magic. Harry scanned the mess hall, his eyes picking up both his new friend and his personal information gatherer. He walked past the table Misley was sitting on, leaving the timetable, and walked to a table that had only 2 students, twins. It wasn't hard to tell them apart though, considering they were a boy and a girl, with the boy being considerably taller than the girl. Harry sat down, ignoring their questioning stares, creepy though it was to have the same face look at you, and took his time to take in their looks. Looking closely, the girl had a rounder face, as the boy had already lost some of his baby fat. Their eyes were a curious shade of purple, almost like amethyst, and their hair was a reddish brown, long enough to cover part of their ears, which were pointed upwards. "I'm Harry Potter," the English boy held out his hands. "You?" The twins looked at each other, their eyes darkening a few shades. Harry had no doubt that they were Aluxes. "We're Nihil," started the male Alux. "And Nick Zavala," continued the girl. "Zeppelveda, Alux," twins of hell, concluded the 2, their eyes turning a dark shade of yellowy green. "Puta madre, they were pranksters, prankster twins." Harry would have to thread carefully. "Any reason for the tittle, or is it self-appointed?" The twins grinned at his question. "Well," the male put in a thoughtful facade. It may be because of that one time. No, I don't think that's the reason, my dear sister. Nahil snapped his fingers. It's because of that time. Yes, the time we got our aunt. No, I was talking about the time with the dog. Wasn't Aunt Izanyaya there? No. That was another time. Harry was sure they were doing this only to annoy. They were succeeding, as amusing as it was to an outsider. Remember, we were at the hacienda and... Ah, that time. Yes, the two turned to him again, smiling at his scowl. We've got no idea why they call us that, the two said. Harry had to restrain himself from strangling them. I assume you're Chaos Alux, as he felt his eyebrow twitch. The Demon Twins, as he named them, tilted their head in opposite directions. No/yes. The two frowned. Yes/no. They started to glare. He or she, as the glaring got harder. I am. They nodded. You, or they pointed at him. Harry took a deep breath. Nothing could save him if he insulted a Chaos Alux. They were vindictive bastards. Is there anything you take seriously? Harry asked. The two nodded. Family, they said. Nothing is more important than your family, continued Nicked. Not even your allies, ended Nahil. Harry nodded. Perhaps they wouldn't be so bad if they could stop being goofy. Then I believe we can get along, the twins grinned. The principal felt a shiver go down his spine. Mundane Studies, 9 a.m. Sit down and shut up. The voice of Professor Edgar Collier Gutierrez broke through the noise in the classroom. Edgar was a tall, white man with gray eyes and black hair, one of the two teachers with no Indian, Mayan or otherwise, blood running in their veins. At age 40, Edgar was not a patient man, and would prefer to spend the rest of his days teaching in a university rather than a secondary school, but the SEP wanted him to teach brats, and when the higher-ups said something, you did it. The class quieted down. My name is Edgar Collier Gutierrez. You will call me Professor Collier or risk punishment. This is the only class you have the 5 days of the week, and it will be divided like this: math, language, science, English and PE. I am not here because I want to, and if you make my life miserable, I will make yours so hard that you will want to flunk out of this school and go crying to your mommy. The class gulped, though Harry noticed that the devil twin in his class, Nicked, grinned madly. Take out your language book. No one dared to argue with him. Charms classroom, 10 a.m. Hell class, a cheerful voice greeted them as they entered the Charms pyramid. I am your Charms professor, Abigail Lopez Almaguer. Professor Abigail was a rather attractive woman in her 30s with dark skin, dark brown hair and gray eyes, with a petite body and cheerful disposition, something that her students liked about her. Though it may also be her large chest, Harry could see some of the males of his class ogling at her, even though the robe she was wearing covered almost everything. She had started her teaching career 6 years ago, a bit before the earthquake of the '85, where she had almost been caught had it not been for a kid that had asked her help with some work he had to do. As you know already, you have class with me every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I will teach you all about passive and active charms, starting with universal ones and going to the exclusive Mayan ones. Now, if you could please take a notebook out, we need to discuss some theory first. She smiled at them. Now, who can tell me what the most useful charm is? Most male hands were raised, only some girls raised theirs, Nicked among them. The Alux would probably say a prank spell. Mess hall, 11 a.m. Harry walked with a cheerful Nick to the cafeteria, picking up her brother along the way and finally meeting with Misley once they had arrived. Yo Harry, how were your classes? Asked the Chupacabra as he approached, noticing the two that had taken position besides his friend. And are you going to introduce me? The twins grinned, making their eyes change from purple to green. Why hello there. We are some figment of your imagination. That wants to introduce you to the joy that only pranking can bring. Misley looked at them and then at Harry. I'm not hallucinating, right? Harry sighed and looked at Misley in the eyes, regret evident. I had the misfortune of meeting them during breakfast. The twins put on hurt faces, their eyes darkening to gray. You wound us. I thought we had something special. Maybe we should. Nahil turned to his sister. We shall, my brother. And so Harry found himself suffering from lack of air, courtesy of the twins squashing the life out of him. Battle Magic class, 12 p.m. Hello class, I am Alan Avina Guerra, and I will teach all you must know to defend yourselves. Alan was the image of a warrior, with the grace of someone who had survived battles for survival and the hidden strength of a survivalist. During your 6 years you will learn as follows and in the same order: Common Battle Magic, Defense against Dark Magic, Defense against Foreign Magic, Wave Magic, Blunt Magic and Mixed Magic. Some of you may be eager to learn Blunt and Wave Magic, but there is a reason it isn't taught until Prepa. It simply takes too much prana for a 12, 13 and 14-year-old to try. Some of my 15-year-old students have fainted for repeated casting of wave spells and maintained blunt magic. Even with the risk of humiliation by fainting, many still looked eager, Harry himself included. Now, they all looked at Alan, who can tell me what is magic? Herbulary Class 1 p.m. Izanyaya Aguilar was a woman who had dedicated herself to learning traditional medicine since she was 20, after brother had almost died because of an allergic reaction to a medicine. Like most of her family, Izanyaya was just 1.54 meters tall, with a natural tan and chestnut-colored hair, though her eyes were a rarity among her family, considering they all had either brown or dark green eyes, while hers were sky blue. Like with Professor Abigail, Harry's male classmates ogled at her, even though her chest was smaller. Why did he have to put up with perverts? Good afternoon, class, my name is Izanyaya, and I will not tolerate perverts her, so shut your mouths and look at my face. Well, at least she was strict. Herbulary, and all its derives, is a dangerous art. Any missed fact, wrong assessment or ignorance can kill a practitioner, so I want nothing but attention in this class. She was a woman of her trade. Good. Potions classroom 2 p.m. Harry's last class before lunch was potions, something he was looking forward to. The ability to make explosives was too much a temptation. The healing potions would also help, considering the 2 troublemakers he picked up during breakfast. Hopefully they would start with easy medicinal potions first. Harry had no time to open his book, for the professor, a tall tan ginger with green eyes, or maybe there were so much freckles that the face looked tanned, came running into the class. Sorry I'm late, class, I was picking some herbs. Harry was skeptical, considering the messiness of the guy's hair, but who was he to say anything, considering his hair looked messy all the time. Welcome to Potions, here you will learn what you need to know to properly brew without stuff blowing up in your faces, something that I know will happen to at least one of you at least once a week. My classes will always be behind herbulary, later on herbal medicine, because without herbal knowledge, the only thing that could be brewed would be something deathly, something recreative or something volatile, meaning nothing you can learn until your last year here. Now, take out your notebooks, I need to get you over theory first. The students complied. Now, who can tell me why a cauldron is used over a lighter pot? Mess hall 3 p.m. Harry collapsed on a chair, ignoring the looks the few that could see under his cloak gave him, and started to serve himself food. The little fruit that had been around during lunch had done nothing to calm his hunger, which was running rampant once again. The raven-haired kid smiled as his wolf pup came running into the hall. Most people simply ignored it. It wasn't the first kid with a pet. A flamboyant parrot that liked to annoy and or hit on people normally took surprise out of them. Its min's arrival only increased the number of stares, though they were directed to the cute little puppy. The wolf just ate some meat from Harry's plate. Dormitory 9 p.m. Harry collapsed on his bed, its min jumping on him and laying down. It had been a tiring day, and it would only get worse on non-pair numbers of the week. 5-hour-long classes were simply too much. September 9th Han Ab Kun school breakfast. Que puta mierda? Harry looked up from his eggs, huevos motoleños, to see one of his classmates, more like your mate, covered head to toe with. How did they get cockroaches? As far as he knew the buggers only appeared on dry weather. Then again, the 2 chaos alux from hell had experience, poor bastard said miserly as he sipped from his bowl. Harry nodded but asked the twins, where did you get them? Nicked and Nahil tried, and failed, to look innocent. We have absolutely. Started Nicked. No idea of what. Followed Nahil. You're talking about the 2 finished together. Their evil grins and shining eyes did not help their case any. At least they hadn't targeted him. Mundane teachings 9 a.m. Shut up and take out your biology books, shouted Professor Edgar over the noise of the class, making everyone quiet. Harry just hoped they got another teacher soon. This one was way too angry. It didn't help that Nick still had that grinning look. Hopefully she would only get her brother into it. Care and Culture of Magical Beings 10 a.m. Professor Atsiri Rojas Rivera was the complete opposite of Nicked and Nahil, an orderly alux that exuded an aura of seriousness and caring, something that greatly helped her when dealing with the creatures of the forest, particularly the mating Kukulkans. She was, as the rest of her kind, barely hitting the 1.50 meters tall with auburn-colored hair and eyes that were constantly changing between gray and light green. She was also wearing non-traditional clothing, most likely because jeans and a shirt were more practical than the tunic and cloak. She had to be practical, considering she treaded thin ice whenever she met with a dangerous or territorial creature. Okay class, my name, as you heard the principal say during the welcoming meal, is Atsiri Rojas, and this is my class. She started to write something on the board. Our first 3 years will be spent on learning how to deal with cultures of being like goblins, werewolves, centaurs, merpeople, Yuki-onna, Balamese, things like that. The other 3 years will be spent learning how to deal with the creatures that can normally maim you for not knowing them. If any of you has any doubt, then please stop me to ask a question. They all nodded, though some of the people were still whispering among themselves. And so started a lecture on all kind of magical cultures. Transfiguration, class 11 a.m. Jeremias Perez Archundo, a more Mexican surname only Perez Lopez, was a man that had studied transfiguration and conjuration under his father when he was a teen, and just like his father, he had a real talent for it. It was rather unfortunate that he was already in his late 50s, his hair was starting to fall off and his sight was getting worse by the year. He was still active though, his pale skin was full of muscles, his dark green eyes still shone with liveliness, his white hair was perfectly so, meaning he had no failures in any organ. Even entering his 60s, he was a strong man. Class, transfiguration is a subject where I can only push so much. I can't help you with incantation, I can help you with motions, but the change itself is up to you. We will start with simple stuff, things of similar mass, and then, during third year we'll start with more complicated things, but first come the laws of transfiguration, laws as valid as the one of physics. The professor transfigured some objects of the classroom to make examples, like an apple to an orange, a cup to a vase, the desk to a hammock. Harry was right about this subject, hopefully he would have a knack for this branch of magic. Mess hall, 12 p.m. Harry glanced to his right, where the devil twins were whispering about something, then to his left, where Misley was looking at his bowl and glancing at the twins, as if expecting something to pop up from it. Considering what the two had managed in the morning, not even a week into term. Then he looked at the person in front of him. Luz Uribe had decided to sit with them during lunch, something mystifying, considering the threat he had given last time he had seen her. "So, anything you would like to say?" said Harry as he calmly ate his mango. Well, I wanted to say hi." The blonde could not decide on whom to look at, and it certainly did not help that Nick and Nahil stole glances at her, and to talk for a while. Everyone took a mouthful of their food on surprising synchrony. "And what would you like to talk about?" The twins grinned at Misley's question. "Could it be my brother?" "It may be so, my sister. She came to steal our eyes. She wants our soul." "Wait," Nick turned to Nahil. "That's with gingers, not with blondes." The two frowned, looked at each other and nodded. "She's a gold digger." Harry facepalmed, Misley almost spit the blood back out and Lucy looked scandalized. "She comes from my orphanage," said Harry, but the twins ignored him. "Maybe she's a vampire." "It could be, I don't like how she's looking at us. Those evil eyes that want to enslave us. Those green eyes that will hypnotize us. All hail the Hypnotoad. All hail the Great Pumpkin. All hail Emperor Palpatine. May the Force be with you." Harry sighed, "Just ignore them." The blonde could not relax for the rest of the meal. Charms, 1 p.m. "Okay class, settle down, the lesson starts now." All males quieted down, the girls following shortly after. Today we will discuss the difference between active and passive charms, starting with accidental magic. When no one spoke up, Abigail questioned, "What did some of you do when you were children? Anything works?" A kid, tall and thin with a dagger at his side, raised his hand. "I lit up my room once." The professor nodded. "Yes, the light charm, useful in the night." A girl spoke up. "I called my teddy to me once." The girl blushed at the stared. Summoning charm, perfect for lost things. The whole hour was lost giving examples. Battle magic, 2 p.m. Common battle magic are spells that everyone everywhere can cast, and are normally hexes, jinxes and light curses. Nobody spoke, too interested in learning. Thing like the knockback jinx, tongue-tying curse and stinging hex, are all common battle magic, and even though most of you don't think so now, basics like this can save your life in a battle. However, you as the frontline fighters drew the short stick of the bunch and will have the hardest time learning common magic, as it requires both motions and incantations, and with things like daggers, swords, spears, hooks and maquayoodles, motions are some of the hardest things to do. That is also what you'll have the easiest time with blunt and wave magic, but as I said, that will come later. Now, theory time, and please write this down. Motions are important when casting. One of the reasons European wand magic and Japanese hand seal magic are the easiest ones to learn. However, when dealing with melee weapons, motions have to be eliminated, and common magic has to be done when thrusting and with incantation only. Magic done with melee weapons like this is the hardest to do, and the only way to cast is with pure willpower. Picto Rune Class 3 p.m. By this time Harry was already wondering how they expected his class to stay awake long enough for astronomy, even if they had slightly longer nights. When the class quieted down, Harry looked at the door to see a woman whose posture screamed bubbly. In her early 30s, though she wouldn't tell anyone that, Catalina Avila Trigas had acquired a healthy tan by spending a lot of time swimming at the beach. Her dark, almost brown, blonde hair and, again really dark, blue eyes completed the image of someone that liked to spend time with her friends having fun. "Settle down everyone," she said in a sing-song voice, "now take a notebook out, 'cause there's nothing but theory until your last secundaria year, until then you have to learn to write again." The class groaned, making the teacher frown. Well, how else do you want to follow tradition? Harry found himself missing Professor Edgar. At least he managed to keep class in line. At least he could go to the library and learn on his own if the class failed. Mess hall 4 p.m. Once again Harry found himself sitting with Lucy in front of him and the non-humans at his sides, though this time the twins looked expectant, as if waiting for something to happen. Harry just sat, calmly eating his tacos, while waiting for the terror to begin. He didn't have to wait much. As soon as the screams and laughs started he knew something had happened. The raven-haired boy turned around and smirked at the scene that greeted him. Some unnamed person had somehow gotten all the people of one table to transform into Furbies, and apparently a girl had a trauma with the things because as soon as she had seen the things she had jumped onto one of the tables in fright and hit one of the transformed students to the floor. Through it all Harry couldn't help but wonder, how? I ask again, even when the answer won't come, Harry said, how? The twins looked at each other and frowned, their eyes changing colors so fast he couldn't follow the changes, until the settled on blue. We stocked up. Before coming. Before receiving the letter. We worked for hours. Spent time trying. Almost lost our dignity. But we persevered. And now none stands in our path. For we have conquered the unknown. Stopped the unstoppable. We are ready for everything. Harry blinked, once, twice, and a third time for good measure. The two were good at evading questions. Astronomy classroom 9 p.m. Harry sat on the dirt and grass that made out the observatory floor, half listening to the whispers but looking directly at all the visible stars. Since they were away from the city, almost in the middle of nowhere, almost all the stars of the sky were visible, a great difference from his hometown in Quintana Roo, where the only stars visible were the biggest ones. Everyone hushed as a woman, who was also staring at the sky, sat herself on the floor. She was a stereotype through and through, dark brown skin, long brown hair, slightly slitted eyes that were greenish-brown in color. Mayan descent on both parents. She was Tisdal Zavala Zepelveda, a woman that, if possible, would spend all night staring at the moon and stars. She wanted her students to be the same as her, stargazing enthusiasts. Too bad she only got 2 or 3 of them every generation. Astronomy is one of the most important branches of magic. The moon and the stars and the sun, they all affect potions and rituals and runes and plants, and almost no one recognizes it. For example, the zodiac does affect people, it affects their temper and mind. A Sagittarius will almost always be sharper than a Pisces. My duty will be teaching you all I know about astronomy, the properties of the stars, of the moon, of the sun and all things you need to know to get better results in potions and rituals. Harry sighed, while knowing that astronomy was useful, a professor that was less laid back would be good. Oh well, at least it would be interesting to learn and put the knowledge to practice. Potions really interested him. Dorm room midnight. Harry, not for the first nor last time, pondered on what could have happened had he stayed in England. Would he be ignorant to magic? Would they kill him if he saw them again? When could he go out of there? Would friends eventually come to him? It was all a what-if condition, and he couldn't help but think that he had done the greatest decision when he ran away all those years ago. Hunab Kun School September 24th Battle Magic Class. Okay, we've had enough practice with pure magic, all of you have gotten how to cast with weapons, now we start with actual spells, starting with Linchin, the knockback jinx. The reason this is the first spell you'll learn in my class is because of the simplicity of it. All it does is pushing, something that every moving creature can do. Please remember that there are basics for a reason. I can count with all my fingers, hands and feet. The rhymes I've been saved by things like this or the levitation charm. Now, pick a partner and start practicing the jinx. You have 4 classes to get the hang of it. I'm behind schedule, not that I care. Harry found himself partnered with a kid that could have passed unnoticed on any crowd, no matter which one. The two nodded to each other, Harry motioning to the other kid to start casting, and he did. The raven-haired kid took a step back as the spiraling orange bolt hit him, noticing that he didn't feel as winded as he had expected from the magical punch. Maybe it was just magic that pushed him back, instead of a physical strike. It was worth researching. Harry casted the spell, moving his leg forward as he did, and noticed that the drain on his magic, something that always bothered him with the pure magic throwing, was incredibly less than before. Research into spells was necessary. Mess Hall, September 25th. Harry sighed as he looked at the Alux twins of hell, who had once again, for the third time of the month, had somehow managed to smuggle their pranks materials into school. This time they had managed to get a pack of rabid chihuahuas that had hyperactivity issues into school. The little trembling dogs had assaulted the mess hall, stole all the meat and made messes on the tables. It was lucky that Harry's group had its men with them, as the wolf pup was apparently fierce enough to make the dogs afraid. Their table was the only one untouched by the things. Charms, October 1st. Class, today I'll teach you the levitation charm, since you've managed to change your sizes fast enough, Professor Abigail said as she demonstrated the charm. Now, some of you mentioned the color-changing charm some weeks ago. Nick glared at Harry, having heard the story of how he had changed the color of a teacher's wig and refused to tell the complete story. The only thing he said was that it was a good change, considering the thing looked like a hedge. But this is the perfect charm to learn control of your magic, it being one of the few constant charms. Like the disillusionment charm, Harry looked at Nick, who was grinning madly at what the name of the charm implied. The teacher had just given her the tool to make even more pranks. Even a month later he didn't know how the devil twins had managed to get all those roaches. Potions, October 1st. Now, people rarely realize it, but potions actually do have a use outside the lab, and outside medicine too. Harry was really starting to doubt Professor Kimali's excuses of being late. It didn't help any that Professor Itziana almost always ran out of the classroom as she dismissed herbulary. Maybe the two were dating. Nah. There are exploding potions, something you won't learn until your final year here, and the general relief pepper up, something perfect for colds, lack of energy, pretty much all common ailments. I'm going to dictate the instruction, write them down, and if we finish them the next class will be brewing it. That sounded useful to Harry. His friendship? Companionship? With the twins got him more and more headaches as the days passed. He really wanted them to calm down. Mess Hall, October 2nd. So far Harry had enjoyed a relatively calm semester, not counting the mundane studies nor the pranks and antics of Nick and Nahil. His partnership with Lucy had somehow evolved into a tentative friendship from the partnership it had been when she decided to trespass into his room. Misley, the easygoing chupacabras, had managed to become his best friend, as the boy had spent more time with him, the twins and Lucy, than with the others of his species. Nick and Nahil, the Chaos Alux twins, showed themselves to be dependable individuals, even though they gave him the worst kind of headaches whenever their prank struck. He was sure the headmaster Rivera and Professor Allen suffered the same. Of course, relative peace could not last forever. Jamie had decided that 3 weeks were more than enough to come up with all the possible comebacks to the insults Harry could make. Joputa, you found people as idiotic as you. The chubby boy was followed by 2 boys, and surprisingly, a girl. Harry looked at him and said, "Why el burro habla de reyes?" He took a bit of his eggs. Any particular reason you decided to curse me with your presence? Misley tried to stifle a snort, while the twins did not succeed. Lucy just facepalmed, knowing what to expect. I came to ask if you were leaving soon. Funny, I was expecting you to give up on school by now. Nick looked eager to listen, while Nahil just looked interested and amused. I hear that constructing leaves a good money to stupid people. Then why don't you go into it? Because who else would make sure you do your job? You are, after all, a lazy ass that doesn't like to move. Harry stood up from the table, leaving behind a mix of amused and angry teens. CCMC, October 2nd. From now on we start with the actual culture of some creatures from Mexico, starting with Balamese. Harry leaned forward, wanting to hear about the hairy creatures that got the school their food. When the Spanish reached America, they thought that the Balamese they encountered in the jungle were a new kind of forest elf. This wasn't really far off from the truth. Balamese are a kind elf, but unlike wood elves, normally called forest elves, Balamese only have control over the growth of plants and can't control wood, only vines, which they use to bind an enemy and deliver the killing blow themselves. Balamese have a sharp eye and mind though, as most elves, except the bastardized house elves, do. This makes them the perfect alarm system, as when they shout, and you're either really lucky or really smart if you can make one speak by yourself, Their voice can be heard by miles. That is actually one of the reasons the Mayans lasted as long as they did, both during the Cortez War and during the rebellion, but you'll probably see that in history class. I've had the privilege of accompanying Balamese to their home, a village in the jungle, and I was sent into a cultural shock. Absolutamente to do, even children, were minimalists, houses were just big enough, not a centimeter was wasted, everyone had a purpose and not a single move wasn't thought of ahead of time. Can you imagine how much more advanced would humanity be if we had that kind of organization? Throughout the lecture the professor was wildly moving her hands. It was worth considering, Harry thought, maybe the mundane would have reached the digital age years ago. October 10th. So we finally get to see a ball game in school? The group was walking through the campus to one of the 2 courts the school had. Yep, answered Misley, sucking blood from a bag, it's to see who wants to join the team. Lucy frowned, but first years can't play. Nihil's eyes were an exited orange, but we can watch, and I haven't seen one for a month. Nick rolled her now dull gray eyes, I still don't understand why you like it, it's just a bunch of half-naked people hitting a leather ball with bats, it's like baseball but more complicated. Harry tuned out the discussion and turned to Misley, who looked amused at the siblings' fight. Would you care to explain why Nihil is such an enthusiast about the sport? The chupacabras looked thoughtful. Well, you know football? Harry nodded. Well, you know how fans can get about it. Ulama is the same for magicals, and every state has its own team. The 2 looked at the twins, where Nihil looked ready to hit Nick, who looked annoyed. So, it is the same as the mindless people who like only watching football? Kind of, only add the magical stakes for losing. You mean it still happens? Lucy joined the conversation. Misley looked at her horrified face and chuckled, yup, winners keepers, losers weepers, only deeds can't be won. That's horrible, the blonde said. Harry looked at her, our life is worse, Lucy, besides, the players know what they get into. The game turned out to be a bit boring, as the only action there was happened when the players tackled each other in attempts to block the ball, and it didn't help that the game lasted for longer than a normal football game. Transfiguration October 14th. Harry looked at the 50-cent coin sitting on the desk, trying to imagine the objective that Professor Jeremiah's given them. As soon as class started the professor had given them the not entirely worthless coins and had told them to change it to a ring. Neither the material nor the ornaments were important, as long as it was wearable and didn't change back in seconds. Extra points would be given for making it more complex than a simple band, but that was for after he managed the transformation. Insurance couldn't hurt if he got a bad grade in the monthly exams, not that he would need it if the level stayed the same throughout the years. The exam of September had been really easy. Of course, it had also been pure theory about the laws of transfiguration. Harry shook those thoughts out and looked around, noticing that most had only managed to make a ball that vaguely resembled the color of copper. The emerald-eyed boy pictured the ring he wanted, a simple silver-colored band sectioned in 3. Letting his magic run its course, Harry pictured both the coin and the ring, the later growing and soon passing the coin in size. When Nicked, one of the few who had managed anything but an amorphous blob, gasped, Harry knew he had succeeded. When the raven-haired boy opened his eyes and saw a ring, with only dents at the side, as if it were from a mold, sitting there. Professor Jeremiah came close to the table, saw the ring, patted Harry's shoulder and nodded approvingly. Harry did have a knack for transfiguration. October 14th. Why don't you help us? Nick whined as they left the pyramid and joined the others. Because unlike you and your brother I like quiet and order. But they're no fun. Whether they are amusing or not, I will not risk my student profile to help you prank people. Nick pouted at him, quite the effect her face had. But wouldn't you do it for me? That would work if I were older or related to you, Harry said as he looked at his timetable. As it is, it would only work on the upper years or on professors. But when the girl realized that he was indeed unaffected she huffed, fine, be like that, and here I was thinking about telling you how we get the pests to school. It was a trap, Harry knew it, but the temptation of knowing that was too much, and if it was only one, then perhaps. I'll help you with one, in exchange for the knowledge. Harry knew he had taken the wrong choice when the grin spread across Nick's face. Herballary October 15th. Think about this, Mesoamerican people had one of the longest lifespans of the ages before. The average lifespan of a European during the Middle Ages and before was 30 years more or less, while Asians lived to their late 40s, the same as pre-Hispanic people. The reason of their longevity is partly the same, the herbal remedies both cultures had. Whereas the Asians had their teas, the Mesoamerican all had a codex with the medicinal or poisonous properties of the plants they encountered, allowing the immediate response to ailments. The reason I'm telling you this is because now that you know enough about remedies we all have tried once in our lifetime, and now I'll start going over the Mayan medicinal codex with you, starting with the simple stuff. From now we start with the actual herbal medicine, and now more than ever I will not tolerate people slacking off. That was good. Headaches were becoming a constant in his life because of the twins. Hopefully he would start getting used to the constant chaos that surrounded him soon. October 15th. Harry followed his wolf pup into the night-darkened forest. He was sure that if a teacher found him he would be in trouble, but its men hadn't stopped yipping at him when he arrived at the dorm, so Harry had followed the puppy to get him to shut up. "Are you telling me where we are going?" Harry asked the puppy, only to receive a bark. "Why can't you?" "It isn't like there is a secret club around here," Harry scoffed at the irritated growl. "You may have better instincts than I do, but I am more respected. You are but a pup to everyone else." Harry raised an eyebrow at the glare its men threw his way. "I wouldn't be talking if you told me where we are going." The pup refused to answer. Harry sighed and looked around, noticing that this was near one of the Balam farms. "Why do you want me to go anyway?" An excited bark answered, making Harry confused. "Haven't we bonded already?" Itzman shook his head. "Then why can I understand you?" The pup whined, confusing Harry. "You are the first animal I have had a proper conversation with." Itzman only barked with disdain. "It doesn't stay with the animals." The answering bark was definitely a laugh. The rest of the walk, which was now getting into the second half of an hour, was spent in silence with the occasional snap of a twig or a predator hunting for prey. They eventually entered the Balam village, where the obvious leader motioned to Harry to enter its hut. Harry did, after a bit of encouragement from its men, and sat down on the floor when the leader did. "You kid, are an interesting human." Harry had to strain his mind to understand the words. The Spanish was mangled, as if not practiced for a while. "You are not like the last of your kind to step on this lands. You do not seek anything but your justice against those that wronged you." "If it was any different I would be like them. I only want my parents to rest in peace," Harry said. Harry could feel the smile behind the curtain of green hair. "And that is why we told your wolf to get you here. You have a great destiny. You could end the darkness in your birth land." Harry frowned. "I don't want to go back." "You will be taken when the time is right." "How can I trust you?" "Huracan created us Balamese to protect mankind. We want nothing but the good of our charges. Humans don't need protection. You do, otherwise there would be no conflict. Our wars are our own to fight. That is why you need a sitter. Your kind is young, you don't understand each other. Peace has been kept since the 45. Enough of this. I called you not for discussion, but to complete your bond with your familiar." Harry scowled, displeased at being insulted for being a human. "He mentioned that," he said. "It is impressive that you can speak with beasts. The completion of the bond will strengthen it, so hold your hand out." Harry did, noticing that its men looked delighted. Said pup bit down on his hand just hard enough to draw blood, driving a flinch and a glare from him. "It is needed. He wants not pain from you. Now, with the blood of the master in the mouth of the familiar, let their magic combine into one being, mature together, fight together and learn together. You are now tied by your souls until the end, when the god of death decides that your time has come." A flash passed over them and Harry passed out as soon as it passed. "Take them back, leave not a trace of their presence, wipe the conversation away." Behind her hair, the woman closed her slitted eyes. "The humans are not yet ready, sir. They need time still, sir." The air shifted and rustled her hair. "Yes, that boy will help, but millennia still need to pass for it to happen." The next morning Harry told one of the farmer Balamese to thank their leader for him. Charms, October 16th. The simplest charm there is, Saucil, or the light charm, is a really useful one, and since it doesn't need motions, it is the easiest to cast. That was true. With a weapon it should be easy to do anything in the dark with a light on the Macauhuel. It would take out the need of a torch. It is, however, a draining one when the more powerful variations are cast, like the Kian Saucil, solar light charm, or the Chakalian, firelight charm. Both the Saucil and the Kian Saucil don't provide heat, the firelight charm does, one of the reason it's one of the most casted spells in the northern and southern parts of the world. So, the name speaks the effect you want. All you have to do is push your magic, and once you do the basic one, you can start the variations. Harry started to try as soon as the teacher said it, but the light he created, if you could call a spark the size of a firefly a light, fizzled out almost as soon as it appeared. Why couldn't he get the talent in charms and transfiguration instead of potions and transfiguration? At least he got offensive magic fast. Battle Magic, October 16th. The tongue-tying curse, Muk-Ok, is a handy little spell when overwhelmed, especially when dealing with someone who can't cast silently. Harry filed away that bit, finding it useful. You see, it is difficult to say a spell when the lower part your tongue is touching the roof of your mouth. Of course, someone who is good at silent casting can circumvent the spell, but only adults, and really few at that, can do silent casting. Most just get as far as sub-vocalizing the incantation, though that still takes a free tongue. Now, the spell looks like this. Professor Allen thrust his spear forward, a brilliant blue bolt of energy hitting a whispering boy, who spoke mangled words of confusion. You would do well to pay attention, nephew. I would hate if Gustavo got angry. Harry withheld a snort at the student's paling face, though Nick and the girl by her side didn't, the former quickly falling into a cackle and the latter into giggles. He felt sorry for the girl. She would probably join his group of misfits on a whim from Nick. The Alux could be rather persuasive. She would probably annoy her until she agreed. October 16th. That is what happens when you agree with her, I'm afraid. She tends to be rather rash, Harry told the girl that had joined them at Nick's whim. But the only thing I did was snort. Letty Gutierrez Lopez was a tall witch with dark hair, lightly tanned skin and dark green eyes. Harry nodded solemnly. I suffered the same when she discovered my talent at transfiguration, if you remember the seat riders from some weeks ago. Letty looked at him, scandalized. You helped them then? Harry nodded. She offered valuable information. I needed to know how. Misley looked at him with a cocked eyebrow. Dude, they dumped them on the lake. Information is valuable. Letty started to look angry. You got my brother. Harry looked at her. I am sorry then, he said. I was not fully willing. Letty glared at the three of them. October 30th. Picto Runes classroom. Professor Catalina looked up from the papers she was grading, confused as not many people came into her classroom after classes ended. Come in, she said. Her face turned even more confused as one of her new students, Potter, entered the room. I wanted to ask about something, he said, making the professor look eager. Really, not many ask me much outside of class. What can I do for you? She asked. Is there any way to call ghosts? Harry asked, looking nervous. The professor looked thoughtful, her head leaned back a bit. Why do you want to call a ghost? You could visit the old continent, or a crypt. I don't believe they left a ghost. Who? My parents, they died when I was 1, I want to talk to them. Catalina frowned. I don't think it's wise, but there is one. Why isn't it wise? I need some answers from them, to speak to them. From what Catalina knew of Harry, this was nothing like the calm and collected kid that liked to read. Messing with the death is not something for mortals, Potter. People have gone mad for practicing necromancy. I don't want to bring them back permanently, only for an hour tops. The professor looked at Harry, who fidgeted under her gaze. Would it be wise to tell the boy? A boy that had a lot of baggage to deal with. There are 2 rituals, Catalina started, meant for the solstice, but you need the essence of the ones you want to call, a photo or some blood or something they liked, plus the offering to Chammer to ask to let them out of his realm. But until you get that, I am not telling you more. Harry nodded and stood up, not noticing the gaze the teacher had on him. Please remember, Potter, that the living should only deal with the living. But the boy didn't listen to her. October 31. Picto Runes. Dia de Muertos, a day dedicated to celebrating the gods of death. Harry only half listened, his mind on a conversation he had with Professor Catalina the day before. For some reason the lines between the realms of life and death, the days of today and tomorrow, most of the ghosts in the old continent came to be during this time. Those that didn't form these days normally decided to stay. Rituals centered on death are usually held during these 2 days because magic of that kind is augmented due to the blurred line between realities. I am teaching you some characters that relate, since it should make easier to make offering to Chammer easier. He should allow you extra time if the offer is good enough. Harry would do it eventually, he would talk to his parents, it would just take time. December 10th. The month of November came and went, leaving behind not a trace, as the weather in those parts of the world rarely changed more than a few degrees Celsius. The teachers of Hunab Kun thought more spells to their students, the tripping jinx, color-changing charm, stinging hex, pushing spell, cutting hex, bandage charm, watergun charm and flamethrower charm. Why they thought things like that to kids just entering puberty instead of useful things for the daily life was beyond Harry. Right now, as a result from curiosity, Harry, Nick and Letty sat on the ground as Misley, Nahil and Lucy stood with their own foci. Right, so show us ranged magic done right, Harry said sarcastically. You know it's more like support magic, said Misley. It is still better for pranks, a slingshot is better than a sword at stealth, Nahil grinned. You should stop the pranks, muttered Letty, making the Alux twins look at her in shock. Blasphemy, oh no, another of their rants. The pranks cannot be stopped. The chaos must rule our lives. It must rule our lives. Anarchy is the ultimate way. Bueno, ranged magic, interrupted Harry, show us. Nihil raised his slingshot and aimed it at Harry, who got ready to move. The rust-haired kid leaned out of the way of a dark orange ball that looked to be dripping something. The ball hit its min, who had been sitting behind Harry, and pushed him onto his side, making the pup growl. Right, so that's from the slingshot, now the bow, Harry said. Misley made as if he were knocking an arrow on his bow, while saying, Chiquille. A dark purple arrow appeared on the bow. The chupacabras let go of the string of the bow and let it fly to an unaware Harry, who had grabbed its min as the pup wouldn't stop whining. The arrow of magic hit him on the chest, and the emerald-eyed boy had to bite his mouth to prevent the laugh from leaving his mouth. It wouldn't do to ruin his image of a serious student after all. Even he cared about his reputation. They all stared at him as his face started to change color and twitch unstoppably. Harry was glad that Misley had held back a bit and made the spell arrow weaker than usual. It made holding his laugh easier. The red-eyed boy cancelled the effect when it became obvious that Harry wouldn't be letting out a laugh. The British-turned-Mexican boy sighed as he felt the tickles leave him. Cabrones, he muttered, next time try to use someone else as a practice dummy. Why didn't you laugh? Pouted Nicked. I have an image to keep, Harry answered, petting a curious itsman. They all stared at him in silence with deadpan expressions. Right, said Lucy as she took out her staff. Tall-chin, she twirled her staff around and stopped when a bolt of white magic flew forward towards Nihil's slingshot, making it fly from his hand. Hey, the male Alux shouted as he ran after his focus, making them all laugh at him. Harry smiled as he saw his friends. They may not be the best of them all, but he would be lying if he said that he didn't like spending time with them, even if Letty constantly looked as if she would like nothing more than to hit the twins. She wasn't the only one. Still, the girl was a part of the group, a stuck-up part, but a part of the group nonetheless. December 12th. December 12th, the day that the Mexicans celebrated the apparitions of the Virgen Maria de Guadalupe, the Mistress of the Americas. It was curious how the magicals celebrated her when the gods that they believed in were others, and besides, Tonatzin was more for the Aztecs than she was for the Mayans. Of course, considering Huracan, then it was pretty obvious that all mythologies were somehow intertwined. The Virgin Mary was the mother of two main deities, so that wasn't completely off the table. Harry looked around, noticing that the Balamese were forming a square around the student body, most of whom looked excited at the prospect of not only losing the classes for the day but doing it with a party. Harry, of course, was of the same mind, but he knew to keep that hidden. Professors could be vindictive if they wanted to. December 20th. En el nombre del kilo, Harry absent-mindedly pidió posada with the rest of the school, something that allowed him to clear his mind, something dearly needed with the near-constant chaos that surrounded him since the first day of posadas. Nicked and Nihil had somehow gotten more prank materials than ever, and not only that, but they had added a theme to the pranks, so now anyone caught in them found themselves to be part of the festive things that were on the school. Every day, during every meal, one table would grow tree limbs, another would fill with spheres, someone would find themselves dressed as an angel or covered with pine leaves. So far only their table had been unaffected, but he wouldn't put or pass the twins to somehow make the group appear to be Noel's elves. As if to prove his point, one side of the hall transformed into Joseph or Mary while the other transformed into the innkeepers. Harry and Misley turned to the twins while the girls hit their head on the table. How? Asked the two boys, as even the head table had transformed. The twins just grinned as their eyes changed to their common amused green. He was starting to think that they bribed someone. Maybe the cooks were. The laundry guys too. Though they may have gotten some of the Balamese to put things on the food. December 24th. Harry chuckled as its men, who had somehow grown antlers and got a red, shiny nose, chased a cackling Nihil through the school grounds. Misley was not as controlled and was clutching his side in pain from laughing too much. Harry did admit that the scene was quite hilarious, even if the wolf would likely bite him after he bit Nihil. Besides him, Nicked was cackling in her usual, mad way, holding out her hands as she did. She would make quite a villain in a Bond movie. Letty did her best to look non-amused, though it was ruined by the smile that twitched at the edge of her lips. Lucy looked like she wanted to cry, something likely considering she had taken a shine on its men. It was early in the afternoon, they had been on vacation since the day before, and would be until January 13th of the next year. Hey, it was funny, I've got no classes until next year, if only it stayed like that until summer. There was also the expectation in the air, the Christmas party would be today, from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., for all the students that stayed in school. Surprisingly, Misley, Letty, Nahil and Nick had decided to stay in school with Lucy and himself during vacations. Nick and Nahil had received a relieved letter from home a day after they sent their own stating that they would stay. Misley's parents had been more expressive of their feeling on their son staying during a time of family, but they also said that they understood that he wanted to stay with his friends, especially the two that had no coven of their own. How strange, the Chupacabras thought. In just a few months he had become really close to them, even when his relationship with Harry had been one of ambition. He just wanted to eat fresh from the magical wolf that was on Harry's side. But one bus ride later, he and the orphan had become friends and his thoughts about draining the pup went away. Then the boy had befriended two of the dreaded Alux of Chaos and he was treated with a daily dose of mayhem, whether it be during meals or during his free time, there would always be a prank at the ready. Then Lucy, an orphan from the same orphanage Harry came from, joined them one day during lunch with the excuse of wanting to hang out with the more compatible of the two she shared a building with. It spoke volumes of the other character if Harry was the more agreeable of the two. Then on October, Nick had dragged a girl into the chaos that was their group because she too had laughed at the misfortune of their battle magic's nephew. The poor girl still hadn't forgiven Harry and the twins for the prank they had, unknowingly, played on her brother, who now glared at them too whenever they saw him. Still, Letty was a friend, if a distant and strict one. Hopefully the group would stay with their current numbers, any more would make his life much more chaotic than it was already. Speaking of chaos, he let out a particularly loud guffaw when its man managed to bite Nahil. The male Alux was now trying to kick the pup off without much success. "You do know you're making yourself a target by laughing at him, right?" asked Nick from her spot at Harry's right. "I don't care, Hakuna Matata," he smirked at Harry's look. "Did you have to make the reference?" the green-eyed boy asked. The Chupacabras nodded and lay down. "It's a good philosophy," he answered. Harry sighed and looked at his familiar, who had somehow gotten on Nahil's head and was now biting the Alux's hair. December 25th. Harry woke up with a headache that beat all those the twins had created since he met them. Not only that, but he was feeling ill and his head was spinning. Also, the light hurt to look at. "Oh, God," Harry groaned, "what happened last night?" The curtains opened, making Harry groan in pain. "Some upperclassmen decided that spiking the Atole was a good idea," came Misley's voice from somewhere in the room. "How?" asked Harry, groaning again a second later. Misley held out a cup with a red potion. "Hangover cure," he said at the questioning stare. "Someone put tequila in the Atole and in the mole." Harry sighed in relief as the cure worked its way through him, the headache going down noticeably. "Why aren't you like this? You drank more than I." The Chupacabras scratched his neck. "One of the few things my kind still has is the advanced regeneration." Harry glared at him. "And I always have a thermo of blood with me, it helps a lot." "Does the principal know who did it?" Harry asked as he stood up, noticing that his bed was a bit wet, and there was a plate of Atole on his bedside table. Misley shook his head. "Nah, but he's angry as fuck." "Understandable," Harry said as he moved to the bathroom and closed the door. "What about the twins, did they do something?" Came from inside the restroom. Misley let out some snickers from outside. "Hell yeah, they did." The images in his mind threatened to make him break out laughing. "They somehow managed to catch all the teachers in a prank and transform them into Santa Claus and all the reindeers." "Did they use the drunken excuse?" Harry said as he left the bathroom, already dressed. Misley nodded and frowned as his friend made to leave the room. "Dude, aren't you going to open those?" The red-eyed kid pointed to the few presents on the foot of his bed. Harry blinked in confusion before moving to grab his presents. "I hadn't seen them," he muttered. There were 7 presents in total, something strange considering he was only expecting for the usual book that Miss Cammy usually gave him every year. He opened the first one, smiling when he saw the note. "Hey Harry, this came out in November, hope you like it. Miss Cammy." It was a book with a girl and a falcon on the cover, Maximum Ride by James Patterson. If it was his, then it couldn't be terrible. The man wrote well, even if he published a lot of books every year. The next was another book, this one on worldwide mythology, from Lucy. The twins, unsurprisingly, gave him thing that would get him in trouble, prank and joke items. Why would someone make a bomb out of gas was anyone's guess. Letty's was a box of candy, not much of a present, but it would keep his sweet teeth happy. Misley got him a rather nice cap, it would keep his hair down if nothing else. The last box though, had no card, and it was only a box. The raven-haired beau opened it and took out a leather-bound book with a note on top that said, in a neat English handwriting, "Mr. Potter, I was disheartened when your negative reply arrived on August, but I suppose that as long as you are being taught, then there is not much to complain about. I took the liberty of calling a few friends of your parents in search of photos for the album I sent you. I must say, if you are anything like you were when you were a baby, then you have James' looks and Lily's eyes. The cloak on the bottom of your package belonged to your father, he left it to me so I could study it, his demise never allowed me to give it back. Use it well. Harry let a tear fall from his eyes as he slowly picked up the book and the cloak in the box. His heart caught on his throat as a man who looked exactly like him with the exception of being taller, bulkier and with glasses-covered hazel eyes hugged a smiling beautiful red-haired woman with astonishing green eyes so much like his own. Uday, dude, Harry realized that he was crying rivers now and looked up to see Misley's concerned face. You alright? What did the note say? Harry shook his head and put the note inside the album, which he then put inside his backpack. Yeah, I'm fine. He unfastened his cloak and grabbed the one that came in the package, just really happy. Misley looked at his friend, who sent it. A friend from my parents was Harry's answer as he put on the silvery, soft cloak. Puta madre, exclaimed Misley as Harry's body disappeared, what the fuck kind of sorcery is this? Harry frowned and looked down, expecting to see the silver cloth of the cloak, but seeing only the floor, que chingados? He muttered. He was but a floating head. That night, Harry scowled as the twins yet again asked him to borrow his cloak to use it to sneak into the teacher's lounge and prank it. Puta madre, no, he finally snapped at them. It is the only thing from him and I'll be damned if they take it from me because you failed a prank. He stormed off, not looking back at their reactions. He knew he was being harsh with them, but that was the only thing, apart from the moving photos in the album, to remember his father by, and he didn't want to use it for something like pranking. It wasn't something his parents would like. If only he knew.